It was a 3-day extravaganza event, but of course the Melbourne Meets Modi event was the star of the kind of show. This is the third time Prime Minister Modi's been in Australia. He was received by a thunderous applause. Tens of thousands of people had packed out Docklands Stadium. It was such an electric atmosphere. There were people there, who consider him a god, literally a god. They consider him the father of their sort of nation of India, even though they are now Australian citizens. But he was sort of got this rock star reception, and I think in his tale so did Prime Minister Albanese and Premier Jacinta Allen. They are not used to these sorts of receptions. I think it happens with very few politicians around the world, but it does happen with Prime Minister Modi and his diaspora. The Indian community is about 1 million strong in Australia, and most of them, a large number of them live in Melbourne. So it made sense for Prime Minister Modi to be here, but he really spruiked all the successes of India, the infrastructure, the startups, the healthcare system, and it really riled up the audience. They were really excited and proud, that the Indian Prime Minister was there. And I think even from Prime Minister Albanese, he really said all the right things. In this environment, Girish, where we're seeing a lot of anti-Indian sentiment, Prime Minister Albanese said that Australia was better for having Indians in it, and even Premier Jacinta Allen, she said sort of this key thing that I really noted. She said, being an Indian Australian, you don't have to choose between either identity, and I think it's a chord that really struck the diaspora there yesterday. So it was absolutely magnetic.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with that statement and statements as well. So the last time Prime Minister Modi was here was 2023. Again, another massive event in Sydney. Did you see a difference between last night's event and the one in Sydney a few years ago?
I think there actually was a difference. By all counts, the reception last night, could have rivaled a Taylor Swift concert or a Coldplay concert, perhaps. But I think in 2023, the atmosphere in Sydney was just something else altogether. You have to remember, Prime Minister Modi was elected for the first time in 2014. He did make an appearance in Australia then, but perhaps his demeanour, his policies, who he was, that image wasn't as well known. So when he arrived in Sydney in 2023, he really received this electric reception. And as many of the viewers might remember, Anthony Albanese even got maybe a little bit carried away and called him the boss. And so this was the kind of rhetoric at that time. It was really at a fever pitch. And compared to that kind of reception, I thought perhaps the crowds were a little bit more subdued yesterday. It was still, tens of thousands of people, don't get me wrong. And I could be kind of a little bit off because I've just come from India, where I've seen a lot of his road shows, where I've seen, hundreds of thousands of people. But, but still, I think perhaps people have now gotten a sense of what he's going to say. Maybe there isn't that kind of, novelty effect, perhaps. But don't get me wrong. There were thousands of people there yesterday that were absolutely in awe of every word he was saying. But compared to that 23 crowd, I did think it was a bit more muted.
Yeah, he still retains a certain degree of popularity both here and back home as well. Meghna, Bali, great to chat with you.
Thank you, Girish.